Hello, everyone. It's Lisa Norell, episode 41 of the Mindful Marketer Live Stream. Happy Friday, everybody. Hey, today's going to be a full packed discussion. We have so many questions that came in. So thanks to all of you who submitted your questions for our conversation today with Jim Schlexer on how should marketers deal with and work best with the board and the executive team. A few pieces of news first. The first thing I want to do is a big shout out because this is our anniversary session today. I want to thank LinkedIn Learning for all of your promotions and support of my work. You don't even know what it takes to put together 41 different live streams with great guests from all over the globe. So thank you again, LinkedIn Live. And one of the other people I want to thank and we'll be talking to later today, of course, is Stefan Kaplan, my trusty producer from New Jersey of Spin It Social. Could not do it without you. So one of the other things that's really exciting is we have some news, and Steph might be able to show this on screen, is I would like to know if you are enjoying our programs. Make sure you tell us in the chat where you're from. And if you have any questions for us today, be sure to share those. And what I'd like to mention to you is that if you're enjoying our programs and think that the thought leadership I've been bringing to these sessions have made a difference for you, please feel free to nominate me for the Thinkers 50, which will be announced in November. They're accepting nominations right now for thought leaders. And if you feel so moved, feel free to go to thinkers50.com and nominate me for their awards in November. It would mean a lot to me if you feel there is value in our programs and you have benefited from my books, live streams, and courses on LinkedIn Learning. All right, done with the shameless plugs. Let me talk to you about this topic today. We're going to start with a quote from the first century philosopher Musonius Rufus, who said, quote, "For I believe a good king is from the outset and by necessity and a philosopher, and the philosopher from the outset is a kingly person." Now, I bet you never thought of board directors as philosophers and kingly people, but I sure did after spending the last few years getting to know our guest, Jim Schlexer. He is a bit of a philosopher king. He's an adventurer. He's climbed Mount Everest. He's written a book that I keep beside me all the time. Great CEOs are lazy. This is all marked up with notes. Some of the greatest insights here on how to be a great CEO and how to work with CEOs. So we're going to really unpack a few things today about marketers and how they can not only help board members be more effective, but how they can be more effective. So let's welcome Jim Schlexer. Good afternoon, Jim. Welcome.
Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too. Where does this find you today?
I'm in my home office, my COVID bunker in Maryland, Potomac, Maryland.
So has anyone ever called you a philosopher king before?
You are the first. I have to actually correct one thing that you said. I climbed Kilimanjaro, which is one of the 7 continental highest one, but not Everest, unfortunately. And I don't
not Everest. Did I say Everest?
You did, and thank you for the promotion, but no, not yet.
Wow.
Maybe never.
That's a slip up. That's a slip up on my part. But hey, that's the thing about live streams that I love is if you're aiming for perfection, you will drive yourself crazy. So
I just don't want people calling me, asking me for advice on how to climb Everest, because I'm like, I don't know. Wrong guy.
Or do you have your Sherpa on speed dial, right?
Right.
Well, let's talk a little bit about COVID, but not for too long. We've been talking about the pandemic for 16 months now. As you are now serving on several boards and have for quite a long time. You've been in a leadership role in the regional chapter of the National Association of Corporate Directors.
Yep.
Talk to me about where you have, during COVID, seen the greatest points of contention between marketers or marketing leaders and board members.
Yeah. It wasn't as bad as you think, because in a crisis, people tend to line up fairly quickly on, we got to do what we got to do. I would say that the place where there was a lot of rubbing and bumping would be, how do we need to change our business model to be successful and survive? Because that was a really fundamental question that people were asking. It, like, what we did before won't work. What are we going to do differently? And marketers had to be part of that conversation, as well as then promote it and find the audience and so forth. So that was one. And then the other is, it's the classic, McGraw-Hill had something about advertising through downturns and the impact of that. Well, marketing advertising spend was an easy target when I'm trying to preserve people. And so there was a little bit of conflict on that topic as well. Should we cut to survive, or should we spend through and try to position for the other side, which we're now beginning to enter? So those would be the two business model changes, and should we keep spending hard? Those would be the two things I saw, and a little bit of conflict, not in a bad way, but a little bit of conflict.
Yes. And before we continue, I also want you to know we're getting a ton of messages in here. We have Tim from Pennsylvania, one of our fanboys. We have Monique, who's going to join us shortly, from Connecticut. We have Michael from Atlanta. We have Usma joining us from Gaithersburg. And we have more people joining in here. So again, welcome everybody. We've got plenty of time for your questions. Michael says, yeah, survival certainly has an aligning effect. Jim, give us an example of one of the organizations that you've been advising or serving on board, where you really saw people come together quickly and, as they say, get her done.
Yeah. And, just to echo Michael's comment, I wrote an article about this, but, never waste a good crisis as a leader, because it unfreezes everything, right? Everything's on the table when there's a crisis. So all these sacred cows, all these things we couldn't do before, we're like, well, guess we got to consider them now. So it has a remarkable impact. So two stories maybe through COVID. One was a company that really benefited from COVID. So they were in the right place at the right time, and COVID drove a ton of business to them. And what they made were connectors for various electronic items. So your iPhone to your phone, your iPhone to your computer to your printer, all of those combinations. Well, as we moved from the office to home, everybody was upgrading the caliber and the nature of their office, including video, and they needed all of these connectors to make that happen. So they were up 30-40% through all of COVID as people outfitted their home offices. So it wasn't all bad, right? Like, they had a really great COVID. In fact, you might say they were fans of COVID at the moment, right? So, darn, a vaccine came through. Now what do we do, right? On the other side, we had a firm that was in the salon and beauty space. And, so hair and all that jazz. And they had a line of products as well, shampoos and face cream and so forth. Well, the salon business, went to zero. Like, nobody was going anywhere. Like, I didn't cut my hair for months and months and months and months and months, right? So that business goes to zero, and they go, okay, we're in a really big problem. What do we do? So they rotated the entire business over to marketing, e-commerce, the beauty care products that they had. And they grew that massively, and that enabled them to survive. And now that the salon business is coming back in, they've got all this growth in the return of the salon business. But, basically the core of their business vaporized, and they had to jump on another life raft and start paddling.
Yes, absolutely. And how much have you seen marketers and the CMOs that you come into contact with having to really start to amp up their comfort level with data and analysis and digital transformation?
Yeah, and that has to be one of the most significant changes in the COVID environment. We made, and they talk about, the sort of the digital transformation. We probably did 5 years of digital transformation change in a year, and minimum of 5 years, wow. Right? Well, think about the telepresence, All these things happened, as well as commerce rotated to e-commerce as opposed to face-to-face. Think about the retailers. And so if you're not comfortable with e-commerce and the quantitative nature of that style of marketing, where are my interest groups? What has success rate? What's the rate of response? What's the customer acquisition cost? If you are not facile with those kind of numbers and those deep analytics, you're probably feeling very, very uncomfortable. And I'm going to tell you another story. It's never going back. So if you're like, I just got to get through this, and then I go back to the good old days, that's not happening. We are forever digital and quantitative and data. And so I think as a marketer, you're just going to have to wrap your head around it and get good at it.
No, that makes perfect sense. I know that we have a couple of people that have provided some questions today. And boy, I really look up to them as digital marketing avatars. Because they got it. They get it. In fact, I think we have a question from one of my clients, Shane, who is currently in Ireland. Let's see if Shane can join us here and ask his question.
Hi, Lisa and Jim. My name is Shane McCarthy. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Sandbox. Jim, I've been a big fan of your work ever since Lisa introduced me to you a few years ago. And I've been really enjoying the conversation so far today. So my question is, should marketing departments be communicating with the board of directors? And if so, how? Thanks. I'm looking forward to the rest of the chat.
That's a good one.
It is. And, the answer is yes, at appropriate points. So, you wouldn't expect a CMO to be sitting at every board meeting, but there are particular board meetings where the CMO, I think, is particularly appropriate. One would be, let's say, a mid-year check-in on how are we performing financially, our marketing efforts, our response rates, and to help put color to the numbers, because the CFO is going to do the numbers, but behind there's the story of why, what happened, what went right, what went wrong, what are we changing. That's the CMO and the CEO to help explain. I think it really is dependent on, will the CEO let the CMO do that line of speaking. I would recommend it to show the strength of the team. So what's the story behind the numbers? That's a great CMO board level participation. The other place is when we're on strategy. And I'll talk about it more later, but strategy and brand. So this is not the tactical marketing of driving leads, but this is the brand itself. Brand is strategy. Strategy is brand. And so if there's a protector of the brand and making sure that our strategy rings true with our position in our consumers' minds, that's a CMO's job. So when we're talking about strategy, does it fit our brand presence and position is a really useful place to have a CMO engage in that conversation. So those would be 2 points where I would say, that's not every meeting. It's 2 meetings a year for part of the meeting. And I think it'd be really powerful to have a CMO talking about those kinds of things.
I love the idea of midpoint because one of the things that I heard recently, actually this week, from the CMO of a very large enterprise software company who's in our community, our global community, said that they ran over more than 40% over budget when they inherited this new role. And for some reason, the CFO and the CMO were completely out of sync with each other. So when the new CMO went to the board meeting to provide a baseline understanding of the state of marketing, it was very embarrassing to them because, the CFO and the CMO had lost that good connection with one another before that midpoint review.
Yeah, well, and that's dangerous, right? If you don't understand your numbers and that's really another big thing to think about. When you're in front of both the CEO or the board, we are talking the language of business, which is the language of dollars. So you need to be fully aware of where your spend is, what your return is, and speak the language of dollars to them, because they don't care about clicks and eyeballs, and going to leave them very cold to talk about impressions and how many social media engagements that we have. They go, all great. How much money did that? Right? They're going to go right to money. So you got to speak the language of money at the boardroom or at the CEO conversation.
I'm seeing the same thing. In fact, speaking about strategy, I remember we have a question from another member of our community, Eric McCarthy, about strategic planning. And he submitted a question for us today as well, Jim. What is the role for the CMO in the business strategic planning process? What was it maybe before COVID, and has it changed at all now in the new world we're living in?
Yeah, I don't think it's changed in a good organization. And I sort of previewed this, that strategy and brand are the same thing. A brand is not about impressions or sexy ads, or brand is about, here's what we are promising to the market and then delivering to the promise. That's what the brand is, right? The brand is the promise I'm making to a client. And so as a CMO, when I'm thinking about strategy as a leadership team, you're there to go, what we're talking about doing either fits where we sit in a consumer's brain or it does not. That decision is going to give a different kind of customer experience. So you need to be worried about CX here. Is the CX consistent with the brand? And then that gets you into sort of a process conversation, right? So your ops leader might go, hey, I can take $100 a transaction out if I do X, Y, Z. And, the hair should stand on end of the CMO. So that completely could change the customer experience in a negative way. And they need to be a violent defender of and the brand. So that's where I think perfect CEO engagement in strategy, brand, customer experience.
And I'm really happy to hear these success stories like from Usma, who says that she's very fortunate that her CEO puts her front and center to address growth and projections and the state of the marketing and brand experience. Because we wear two hats now. I think we're going to be wearing three hats much more in 2022 around not just revenue growth and brand repute, but also that seamless customer experience. Oh, here's a great question from Michael Taylor. How do you get people to act upon the critical but not urgent, related that acute issues, but issues equally related to survival, but are down the road seem to rest more with the top few people? Very interesting question.
It is. It's an age-old debate, right? It's a little bit of a chicken and the egg conversation. It just, loops up. But, the answer, unfortunately, is you got to do both, right? And the only way to do it, though, is about having the right amount of buffer built into your human capital. Meaning, so when a basketball player wants to make a shot, they'll box somebody out, meaning they'll create space for themselves to make the shot. The same thing has to happen on urgent and important. If I've got just enough people to handle all those darn urgent issues I've got, you've never created the space and the talent to go pursue the more important longer term things. So you have to have that buffer of talent where they're not fully engaged, and I'm going to push them onto the longer term issues. So it's a staffing leadership conversation. Now, having said that, there are periods that we go through where it's all urgent. It's all survival. Like we're in the middle of COVID, there was no long term. It was make it to the end and survive. Well, we're now coming out of that, and you should really pop your head up and go, what do I need to do for next year, right? This is about being long-term greedy, not short-term greedy, right? So we're always short-term greedy, maximize today, maximize the quarter. You'll never get to long-term greedy, which is maximize the value of the organization, build something that lasts and is of value to clients. So create buffers and rotate some of your time to the longer term very consciously is the way to get around this one. If you're light staffed and they can only handle the urgent, you'll never get to the long term. So it's a managerial problem ultimately. But,
that's great. And having that buffer, and it's always good to use some analogies as you just did. I also want to remind people that if you're hearing things from some of the leadership team, like, well, we have 10 priorities or we have 8 priorities, somebody's got to be a referee. Let's continue the basketball analogy here, but please be a referee and say, look, in marketing, we have this incredible ability to be educators of the board of what the customer is feeling, thinking, buying, and doing. So find a way to, if you can, be a referee to get those priorities down to a few, 3 or 4.
Yep. I used to walk around saying, there's 3 things that you need to remember, right? And people go, wait a minute, you had 4 fingers up. And actually, it's a book by Larry Bossidy, who was a former CEO of Allied Signal, and he said it's 3 things. That's all people can remember. And when somebody says we've got 10 priorities, in my head, I go, therefore you have no priorities, because it is impossible to have 10 priorities. So you got to pick. And even if it's 3 for a quarter, we're going to bang really hard on them. Then we might drop 1, add 1, right? I could get to 7 or 8 over a year and a half, maybe, but 3 at a time, because people will not remember. Going back to Jack Welch, he walked around GE, $100 billion company. He said in those days, he said, drive to services, globalize the business, 6 Sigma. That was it. That's what he talked about it. Light bulbs, locomotives, refrigerators, medical equipment, 3 things. Super simple.
Yes, because if you're planning on hiring or you're dealing with turnover right now, which many of my clients are experiencing, try to explain 10 priorities to a new hire and watch them bolt out the door. Remember, with unemployment dropping and many employees now in the driver's seat, you've got to look at your communications and your priorities with even a better fine-tooth comb. Yeah. Speaking of fine people, we have Monique Elliott joining us today, Jim, from Connecticut. Welcome, Monique.
Hello, Lisa. It's so nice to see you, and congratulations on your anniversary episode. That was a nice surprise to hear. And Jim, thank you for taking the time today. You actually brought me down memory lane a little bit. I used to work for Paul Bossidy, Larry's son, at GE. I was at GE for 16 years, so that was fun to have a little trip down memory lane with you. So Jim, I have a question. We talk a lot about best practices and here's what we should do. And here's all the great things that people have done to be successful in front of the board and the CEO. So my question is, what have you seen people do from big mistakes? Like, what is the biggest mistake that you've seen a marketer do in front of the board or in front of their CEO?
Well, you could get crazy, but fundamentally, let's say for professional people, right? I think overpromise, underpromise is really a mistake, right? So if you overpromise, you can be a hero day 1, and then you're a bum for, the next year, right? And so you don't want to overpromise, because you're going to put yourself in a negative position where you're always fighting to get, and you're measured against that. And it's funny, as leaders, we're measured by our ability to forecast. It's probably the primary skill of building our reputation, right? Does Monique deliver what she said she's going to deliver? That's your ability to forecast, right? On the other side, if you under forecast, you're like, I got this, I'm going to go low, and then I'll always over deliver. Well, that's not interesting either, because why do I have this big shot marketing person and they're constantly giving these low ball numbers that I, in my brain, have to then bump up by a double because I know they're lowballing me. So you really have to, what I found useful is say, look, here's what I think the most likely scenario is. If these 2 things happen the way they could happen, we could be higher. If these 3 things go the wrong way, we could be a bit lower. But my best guess is this. That's a really intelligent and more nuanced conversation around forecasting. And I think you end up building a reputation of being thoughtful, delivering what you said you're going to deliver. And if it doesn't happen, you go, well, I said these 3 things had to happen. They did. Here we are. Here's what I did to mitigate it. But that's an intelligent conversation. So that would be the big one. Overpromise, underpromise, just fundamentally not delivering what you said you're going to. And unfortunately, marketing generally, not as bad as sales, but generally has a little bit of a reputation of overcommitting. Just a little bit that we got to work on, I think.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
No problem.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Monique. And we got some really great questions. I really hope if all of you watching have not taken any notes yet, this would be a good moment to write some of these things down, because that particular piece of advice, Jim, applies to every functional role, right?
Yes, it does. Even the CEO, same thing, right? Yeah.
Yes. I remember a software CEO in Southern California that I saw at a kickoff meeting. who was just bloviating about their outrageous sales and all of these huge accomplishments that they just celebrated and then what was to come. And nobody in the audience was following along with him. And you could see people were just, the eye rolling was palpable. And believe it or not, that CEO gentleman was gone within 18 months because the credibility was shot.
Yeah. And it's all on his ability to forecast, right? And optimists, I think, have this problem because we always want to be optimistic. We always see the positive side, and that causes us to over project a little bit. And now we got to back, as opposed to pessimists, they're always under the number. And so you got to find that balance point. It's not easy.
Well, tell us, as we all mentally prepare for this new world, and hopefully the Delta variant is under control.
Yeah.
Speaking of eye rolling, but that's a whole other topic. I never knew that our marketing leaders in our CMO peer groups would not only have to start to become customer experience experts, but also public health experts to try to keep up with these radical changes and rapid changes happening. Talk to us about some marketing shifts, other marketing shifts, or marketing leadership behaviors that will change for the better going forward.
Well, we'll start with one. High say-do ratio. By the way, Monique, that's a great comment. I wrote an article about talk-do ratio as a way to measure people's contribution. A lot of talk, a little bit of do. That's a problem. A little bit of talk, a lot of do. We kind of like those people. So talk-do is a really useful concept. But relative to what's going to change, I think one is you don't have to get on planes like you used to. I think travel will not come back maybe ever to the levels it was at previously. My first question, if somebody says, hey, come and see us, is going to be, it's a 1-hour meeting. Can we do it on Zoom? I'm not going to go to the airport, get on a plane, get in a hotel, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to do it on Zoom. It's just way more efficient. I think hybrid structures will exist as well. So the traditional trade show isn't going to look like it looks. Now, people need presence, but I think that's going to be a smaller audience. We're not going to travel 15 people to the trade show. We're going to travel 5, and then we'll do some virtual component as well. So I think you'll see that. But then I think the other one is when you're mapping the customer journey, it's now a digital journey, right? How they find information, how they gain comparison points to product, how they make their decisions, auto calculators, auto configurers. It's a digital journey now. And this used to be tools you'd hand to your your sales organization, say, here's what you run people through to help them decide what product. You go, no more. That's all digital. So the intellectual content of the business is going to move to a digital format. It's no longer going to be face-to-face. So the face-to-face shrinks, the digital increase. So you got to get really good at it. And I think there's a window here where if you really focus on getting great at it, you're going to gain a competitive advantage while everybody else tries to catch up. So there's an early mover opportunity here to become great at a digital customer experience, if you haven't already.
Yes, I will push back a little bit on that, though, because we've had a couple of live streams on the topic of delivering speed to value, getting value to your customers as rapidly as possible, as seamlessly as possible, now that Amazon has trained us to have that expectation. One thing I am finding, however, is that people still want some level of intimacy, and they don't want to make a $500,000 purchase through a chat bot. And, because there is still, we're still human. We still have a feeling of there's some risk involved, and especially if it's a B2B purchase, how do I mitigate risk? Who's on the other side of the phone or the Zoom room? So I think there's marketing leaders can play an incredible role, particularly in educating the board on market research and what the customers are thinking, feeling, and valuing. And how are we going to guide this customer through that journey with some human interaction as well?
Yep. I'm not averse to human engagement, right? In fact, there's a Middle Eastern phrase that says before you do business, you have to smell the other person's breath. And it doesn't mean they have bad breath. It just means we need to spend time together, right? And I believe that. I mean, people need to see you, like you, trust you, but it's not going to be at the rate that it was 2 years ago. It'll be very selective at the right points in the decision process where we have human engagement. And I think your point about very dependent on the risk of the decision, like high risk, high value decisions, you need a little more human. Low risk, low value decisions, I could do it with less human. So that may be guiding as well as an idea.
Yes, most definitely. And what do you recommend marketing leaders do to eliminate too much time behind the screen as leaders? And what do you recommend to them in terms of surrounding themselves with great mentors? You are one of my avatars in how you have built your Inc. CEO Project CEO peer groups.
Yep. Thank you. So there was mentors, and what was the other first question?
Mentors or groups of like-minded leaders and peer groups.
Yeah. I mean,
so either one.
Yeah. And so I think the thing we got to remember as marketers is that there's a Japanese concept. They do something called a QFD, a quality function deployment, and they talk about surprising quality in there. And surprising quality is something that somebody didn't really even know they wanted, but if I give it to them, they go, wow, that's super cool, right? And as marketers, we're always looking for surprising quality. You know, to say, hey, there's always toilet paper in the bathroom, I go, expected quality. In fact, the only place you can go there is there wasn't toilet paper, and now I'm really mad at you, right? So we're not talking about the basics. We're talking about the wow, right? I won't get into what it might look like in a bathroom, but you can imagine things that might be like, that's different, and I can only get it here. So I think you need to talk to humans to get that. And you need to read between the lines of what a survey won't do it. You need to be in front of, and just listen to their problems, listen to their comments and go, wonder what would happen if I did this. How would that would solve that problem in a way nobody else is solving it. And I think that's only through personal contact that you get that. So to get the surprising quality that we're all after to try to deliver to clients and make them go, that's why people bring people there, right? If you can do surprising quality, your customers will become your marketers. They'll go, like Tesla. You know, people that have Teslas,
they're crazy about them, aren't they?
They're marketers for Tesla. Every one of them is a marketer for Tesla. Macintosh in the early days, if you had a Mac, you were a marketer for Apple and Macintosh. So you want to generate that. And the way they did that, surprising quality. So that's with human interaction. So that's one. On the mentor thing, you know, I think this is about asking, Lisa. No, I got to tell you, anybody who's ever asked for some of my time, I never say no. I never say no. I'm always game to give them some time. Now, then I assess, are they listening? Is this going to be a valuable interaction for both of us? Is there, right? But ask. If you've got somebody you think, wow, if I could know what that person knows or get some guidance from that individual, that would be amazing. Go ask. You know,
yes.
Pick up the phone, send the email, ask. And I think you'll be shocked if you'd say, here are 5 to 10 people that I want to spend time with because I want them to rub off on me a bit. And you email them or ask, I bet you get 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. So just ask.
Yes, that's worked. That's worked for me. I mean, that's how I became friends with Guy Kawasaki and Chip Conley and some other luminaries. Now, we don't talk once a week.
Yeah.
But we do stay in contact, and they take my emails. They handle my questions when they come up, and I am eternally. Monique is the same. Like, she's one of my superstar CMOs who I can reach out to. I also want to give a pro tip out there to people. I am a fan of using LinkedIn chat. And I have reached out to many luminaries in my 100 coaches community, as well as CMOs who are really making a difference in the world and delighting customers. And I will reach out to them and say, I got a question for you. And sometimes they answer it in the chat, but sometimes they absolutely will jump on a 15-minute Zoom conversation and we build a relationship. So if you're not using LinkedIn chat ethically, I highly recommend you look into that. So closing recommendation for marketers who want to build better relationships with their boards, Jim, because it's the bewitching hour.
Yeah. Maybe a couple of things. And this is about PowerPoint, because we're always doing our communication with and around PowerPoint. Keep it short. I don't need the whole dang story. Don't tell me how the watch was made, right? Keep it graphic and not so cute that I think you spent an hour on the darn slide. Not like, and I've seen these, like, okay, you weren't doing your real job while you were building a pretty slide for me. So don't do that. And then there's a book that really talks about, and then the last thing is at the bottom of every slide, tell me the conclusion I should be drawing from this slide. Little box. What this means is this at the bottom of every slide. So there's a great book that talks about how to do executive level presentation, which we all do all the time. This works with clients. It would work with the board. It would work with your CEO. It's called the McKinsey Way by Ethan Raisel, Raisiel. So he was a McKinsey guy, and this is the way McKinsey does it. And I can tell you, I've used it my whole career. Super powerful, super powerful. So I would highly recommend picking up that book, and it takes some of those ideas of how you do quality presentations at that level.
Yes, that's a great resource. Appreciate that very much, Jim. And back at you, Monique Elliott in Connecticut. Thank you. Jim, we want you back. So make sure you come back and see us again soon. We also know that you're a sommelier. So maybe next time we'll do some virtual wine tasting together.
I'll drink to that.
Amen. Amen. It's great to see you, Jim. Keep doing your great board work, your great writing, and your speaking and your Inc.com articles, all fantastic. And we'll see you again soon.
Love it. Thank you very much, Lisa.
All right, now for some exciting news. It wasn't Jim great. I've got this long list here of takeaways, books to read, talk-do ratios, surprising quality. I mean, my goodness, I got a great homework assignment here. It's been a year, folks. Before you leave, I want to light a candle because it is our 1 year. It is number 41 live stream. And I want to invite my producer to join me in a celebration. So Steph, thank you for all you do. I have.
And look what I have here.
I wish someone would take a screenshot of this.
Well, I can't do it with
birthday.
2 hands. So somebody's going to have to do a screenshot because I'm going to drop the cupcake.
Steph, I want to say you have made me laugh. You have your New York, New Jersey sassy attitude is just what I need on a Friday afternoon. It makes me smile. We get things done together. We're a great team. I've learned so much about live streaming with your support and the importance of photography and color and quality. So I just want to honor you and say happy birthday to us.
Happy birthday to the Lisa Norell Mindful Marketer live stream.
So should we make a wish?
We're going to make a wish. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Hey,
you know what I wish for, right? You know what I wish for, right? I'm not superstitious, so I'm just going to say it. I wish for health and safety for everyone. That's all I care about right now.
And I wish that all of us learn from this crisis and come out the other side happier, healthier, and more loving towards fellow man and woman.
Yep.
That's my hope.
I love working with you. I appreciate you. And it's been a great run so far, and we're going to continue on. So I'm going to take myself off now and say thank you to everyone for always being here and let you do your conclusion. So thanks, Lisa. Okay.
Thank you, Steph. Everyone, I want to wish you a great weekend. And just as an aside, again, this is a big year for me. I got a big birthday coming up in August. I'll let you guess the number. And no, there are no prizes. And the real prize is spending time with you every other Friday at the Mindful Marketer live stream here simultaneously on LinkedIn Live, YouTube, and Facebook. I look forward to these sessions so much. If you're ever interested in getting to know me better, you know where to find me. I love keynotes. I love working with chief marketing officers and marketing leaders from around the globe. And we're just glad that you get to come here and spend time with us. We're going to keep doing it. So shout out to LinkedIn Learning again for supporting my courses and my work. And remember to stay connected with our live stream calendar so you know where to find our upcoming shows. We have things booked through December, so make sure you're getting our calendar. And join us on the 23rd of July, where we have Amy Barnard-Bond, who's going to be talking about her brand new book, How Promotable Are You in the Promotability Index. So if any of you are looking to amp up your careers, get a new position in the coming year, and position yourself well with your senior leaders, that's going to be a really great conversation. So until the 23rd, enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you then.